someone who has worked with cameras for 45 years and was awarded the Automated Image Association's Annual Achievement Award in 2003. Here is Perry West.
Okay, thank you, Sean. As Sean said, this is going to be about the camera and where it's taking us, literally. So I will ask that you hold your questions until almost to the end. I'll take questions and then I'll have a few remarks after we finish up with questions. If you do have questions, enter them in I think the chat or the Q&A panel.
The chat.
And we'll go from there. So what's in your future? Well, this is not what it's going to look like. But what I promise you is that when it's over with, you'll have a different perspective on cameras and how they're going to be a part of your life. So we're going to talk about where cameras have been used, what's driving the changes, where we're going with cameras, and finally, what does this mean for you? So the traditional cameras. You can remember the Fiddler on the Roof there, Tradition, etc. Okay, if you have one of these, you're probably not taking pictures with it anymore, but it's worth a lot of money. This is the first camera, daguerreotype there, way back when. This is a very highly successful product, the Kodak Brownie.
I have something similar.
Introduced in 1900, I'm sorry, and they sold it in its various incarnations through the 1960s. So having a product that has a 60-year run is just almost unthinkable for those of us in Silicon Valley. And of course, if you watch the movies from the 50s, you recognize that camera. Moving on to twin lens reflex, the Argus C3, which brought 35 millimeter photography to the masses, eventually going to single lens reflex cameras, and even point and shoot. Now we have cameras today are a little bit different. We have the digital single lens reflex cameras that basically replace film with an image sensor. Point and shoot cameras of all kinds of varieties. And here's a question I'd like people to respond to. How many cameras do you own? So I did a count, and I still have 6 film cameras sitting on the closet shelf, too sentimental to let them go, don't use them, probably will never use them. Some of them, I'm sure it'd be very hard to find film for anymore. And then I started counting up the number of digital cameras. Okay, I have a DSLR, I have a point and shoot. My wife has a DSLR and a point and shoot. We have cell phones, 2 cameras each, tablets, 2 cameras each, webcams, laptops. I came up with a total of 18 digital cameras. So what it's showing here is that cameras are more and more a part of our lives. We have them, we carry them with us everywhere we go now. It's really changed us. And here's an interesting thing. Look at the graph of camera sales, and the pink is the film cameras, and it got up to about the year 2000. We started to get digital cameras, and they soared. And then about 2011, they dropped to just a fraction of what they were before. And the reason for that, very simply, is this guy, the smart camera. People said, I don't have to buy a digital camera anymore. I'm carrying one with me everywhere I go. So it's a huge market changer, huge disruption in the market. And we're going to see that more and more. Where are they used? Well, we still use them for photography. They're used in forensics a lot, baby monitors, nanny cameras, Medical instruments are using them more and more. They use them for forest fire detection and monitoring. You know, you don't have the big fire stations. They used to perch on top of the mountains every place and have them have staffed and so forth. Now they just put a camera up there and somebody sits in an office someplace and looks at a bunch of screens. They find it faster. They find it even more accurately. Security and surveillance. We're into our cars, lane departure warning, lane keeping, lane centering, etc. Driver monitoring, I'll cover that in a minute. Smart farming, they're beginning to be used in that. Remote inspection of all kinds of things, temperature sensing, wildlife, astronomy, space exploration. We couldn't be doing astronomy and space exploration we're doing today without cameras. The Hubble telescope wouldn't exist without a camera because they're not going to send an astronomer up there, not that they wouldn't be willing to go and just peer through the eyepieces. So here's an interesting statistic, and I don't know, I think it may actually be on the low side. 1 billion, that's not a typo, with a B, surveillance cameras worldwide. Half of them are in China. Chinese feel that they have a real problem, and they're putting surveillance up just about everywhere. Here's an interesting little device. If you've been to the dentist recently, like I was, they stuck one of these in your mouth and took a picture. Very common, very thing. So I'm going to share a little bit of data with you. It's been estimated, I read this online, so it's that Apple spends $8 a camera for their cameras in their iPhones. That's the camera and lens and the interface, the little flexible cable that plugs in someplace. So this happens to be a picture of a product that was given to me for a project I did, where we didn't want the dental camera, but we did want the camera that's in this dental instrument. And the price, I'm not allowed to disclose it because of NDA, but let's just say for the image sensor and the lens and the little ring of LEDs in there all ready to go out to USB was significantly less than the $8 that Apple is reported to pay for cameras. So what does that tell us? Price is coming way down. Putting cameras places, it's just not a cost consideration anymore. And I do some industrial work. These are pictures off of the internet. They're not systems I did, just weird looking things that they're very impressive. We'll go through there. You've probably all seen these for finding wildlife. I actually have one. I haven't used it. Oh, that's 19 cameras. I forgot about that one. So yeah, wildlife walks by and it triggers it. It senses the motion and takes a picture of whatever it was walking by. Here's an interesting one going into the scientific thing. Leland Stanford had a bet with somebody about whether a horse at a gallop had all 4 legs off the ground at any moment in time. And so he got Meyerbrigg to set up this with 24 cameras, and there were tripwires there. And they would have the horse run through there and trip and take 24 images of the horse. This is the result. And you can see in frames 2 and 3 that Stanford won his bet. So we get into some very interesting things. Now you say, well, that's some really high-speed photography. Where we've gone today, we have systems like this one that acquire images literally at 1 billion frames per second, 1 billion images. Now, that's probably a misnomer because this has between 12 and 32 cameras inside, depending on how you order it. And each one is triggered a nanosecond after the other one. So they come out at that rate, but you're only going to get 12 to 32 images out of this one camera. But we can see things, the speed is really no longer an issue in taking pictures in applications. And we all recognize this fellow who runs around at least one campus here, the Google campus. And it has, I think it has 4 or 5 cameras on it, if I remember right. People who deal with autonomous driving are estimating any place between 4 and 10 cameras on a vehicle for autonomous driving. So I bought a new vehicle recently. I had to, not that I wanted to, but it was necessary. And it has, of course, the rear view camera for backing up. It has a front camera for lane departure warning. And it has this little guy on the rear view mirror that's watching me. And if I start to get drowsy or inattentive, it tells me. It only has told me once. I wasn't drowsy. I was trying to put some trash away and looking down a little bit, and it said, "Yep, you got a problem here." So we're being watched in our vehicles. I guess when cars become completely autonomous driving, they won't have to do that. They won't have to watch the driver. But until then, more and more cameras are going to watch you. Everybody knows about drones. They've made a big impact. Not only are they wonderful for making movies, cinematography is going this way, but they're also used for remote inspection of pipelines, power lines. They're used for looking at agricultural fields to see how crops are doing and progressing. Other surveys of various kinds. Law enforcement agencies use them to look for the bad guys when they're chasing them around town rather than sending up a helicopter. These make a lot less noise. They're less expensive to operate. So they work well. So here's an interesting one, and I want to call your attention. The drone is up here. It's this blue thing right up here. This drone has 7 cameras on it. 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and 1 forward facing. And it is autonomous. It flies itself. It's the rider on the bicycle there, he's carrying a beacon, and it is following that beacon. So I'm going to play this video for you, and you can see how it does. It's not perfect. It's going to get better. By the way, these cost about $999. They're a consumer product. You can buy them today. So it's flying itself. The runner there is holding the beacon in his hand. It's a GPS device with radio. And so we're getting into the area of art. So we're not just into technology, but this is art. This is some kinetic sculptures or art, and people stand in front of it. There's a camera that looks at them. Here's a commercial camera you can buy online. You can see how small the camera is there in the lower right. Let me just tell you, you ain't seen nothing yet. Okay, but that's how small they are. Everybody remembers Google Glass up in the upper left there. Very successful technology, very unsuccessful market acceptance. It creeped people out. They had to withdraw it from the market because if you wore one, people didn't want to be around you. The glasses in the lower right there, you can see the little hole in the center. That's a camera. These are commercially available. You can buy them now. So the person you're looking at, you know, is Sean really not taking your picture? Who knows? There's a watch. You can buy this online now. The camera, I think it's in the top there of the thing. There's a camera built into the watch. And even a pen right there just above the pocket clip. You can see I enlarged it over on the right, kind of grainy. Little camera inside that, that clip. You don't know who's watching you today taking your picture. Here's one by Rambus. Everybody probably knows Rambus, a local company. They developed this lensless camera shown right there in the 0 of the date. And so it doesn't use a lens, it uses some optical structure, and behind it, there's a whole lot of processing going on. But basically, that's about the size of a speck of dust. So cameras can get very small, very cheap. Here's an interesting one, actually put together by Nikon. A dog wears it, it senses the heart rate of the dog. And when the dog sees something it's interested in, the heart rate goes up and you get a picture of his friend. So even your dog is going to be watching you. Here's one, it can actually see your pulses. Take your pulse rate. I'll show you a better video here. Okay, this video has sound. I don't know, it doesn't come through very well. Maybe you can hear it, maybe not. I'll stop it in certain places.
Taking a live video feed from your cheeks in order to extract all the different vital signs from your face. So hold your phone, just one click over the heart, one click, 1 year. So everything here is based just on the light.
So you can see all the things that it's going to pick up by looking at the cheeks. It's going to pick up the heart rate, respiration. I don't know what HRV, SDNN is, something. Oxygen saturation, stress, blood pressure. I don't think they have blood pressure yet, but it's coming. Glucose level. All of this just with a camera looking at you.
And during the next 2 years, we'll be adding temperature. We'll be adding hemoglobin levels. We'll be adding blood pressure in 2 months. We'll be adding glucose blood level in the next, probably next year.
So gives you an idea what's happening right now. What's driving all this? Well, you've heard about the Internet of Things, I'm sure. If you haven't, you've been hiding under a rock someplace. People want data, especially about other people. And we, especially here in Silicon Valley, we're fascinated with technology, aren't we? Everything technology. That's what is going on around here. Lower cost of image sensors, they're coming down. They're going to be really, really, really cheap here. New semiconductor processing technologies are giving us capabilities we couldn't imagine. Processing is coming down dramatically. AI with machine learning, deep learning, we're being able to do things we couldn't think of before. The video I showed you where it's actually looking at the face and telling heart rate and blood pressure and glucose level and all that, that's all based on AI. And runs entirely in the cell phone. And we have more ability to store data than ever before. And finally, augmented reality. Everybody knows about augmented reality. I bet a number of you played Pokemon Go with your cell phones. And basically you ran around and you looked at your cell phones, and if there was something that there was a Pokemon Go character, it would insert that in the picture you were looking at. Other things for AR is if you're looking to buy a new piece of furniture, you can pick it out, show your room there. It'll place the furniture where you want it to be, and you can see what it looks like. Other things going on for maintenance, people doing repair work, able to do consultations and look at something, and it'll overlay directions on what they should do. So a lot of stuff going on in augmented reality. But IoT is probably going to be the biggest driver of all. And you can look at this diagram of IoT. It's in our offices, it's in our homes, it's in our factories, it's in our car, it's in the retail establishments, it's in construction sites, safety, airports, any place you can imagine. Cameras are going to be used, they're going to be picking up data, using it for one thing or another. And this all starts with the idea we have a cloud. And this cloud is this amorphous, big, huge. We used to have a mainframe, if you remember way back in the days, some of you can remember, and mainframes went away when personal computers and workstations came in. Well, the mainframe is making its comeback as a cloud, which means the big computer in the sky somewhere, which is probably a whole bunch of computers. And we have inputs, keypads that we can put things in, temperature, wind detection, sound, pictures, of course, video, time, chemistry, chemicals, smells, such as this, pressure sensors, motion sensors, gyroscopes, accelerometers, buttons that we push, electrical signals, electrical impulses. And then there's outputs. They can move motors, they can turn on lights, valves of various kinds, and a whole bunch of other outputs that are covered up by the pictures. Drones, locks, cars, and other machinery. All of this and this is all coming on. There are hundreds and hundreds or thousands of companies working on Internet of Things. So simply the force, the commercial force to get driving this is so great that it is going to happen. We're going to talk just about cameras. And why do we talk about cameras? Well, as an input device, inputs are necessary. If you don't have inputs, you don't know what's going on. Outputs are, they mean nothing. A lot of these input devices are like the push button. They're just single point, single sensors. With the camera, you have an image sensor that has 1 million sensors in it. So you have tremendous flexibility to do lots and lots of different things. Much more dynamic, much richer in the data that it can collect. Here's an interesting thing: Internet of Things. Basically, world population 7-8 billion people, but we have 20 billion sensors or Internet of Things out there today, and it's just going crazy. It's predicted that the majority of these are going to be image sensors, cameras. There's issues. Cost is coming way down. They're going to be cheap. Power is coming way down. They aren't going to require big batteries anymore. As a matter of fact, there's been a demonstration at a university that took an image sensor and used it as a solar cell to power itself. So it would sit and harvest the light energy for a period of time and then take a picture and transmit the needed data off of that. So it actually took no batteries because it's basically a solar cell. Well, you say, what if you turn off the light? Well, you can't take a picture if there's no light, so it's immaterial. So yeah, people are talking about Internet of Things where you peel and stick around anywhere. This is definitely going to happen. Another thing, we're going to be doing more processing at the edge, which means the sensors, the inputs and outputs are what they call the edge, as opposed to the cloud, which is the center. And for various reasons, we'll get to here, not going to be, there's going to be processing there. Right now, it's estimated there's about 250 billion embedded devices everywhere. That's the big elephant in the room. And it's growing 20% a year. More and more and more, you're going to see the Internet of Things. There's some real challenge. One is there isn't enough bandwidth to handle all these sensors and get them to the cloud, wherever that cloud may be. So what this means is that we do have to process at the edge, and we only have to send not the whole image, not the million pieces of data, but just the few pieces of data that's extracted out of that image. We're also going to be processing at the edge because of latency. You don't want to flip your light switch and wait 3 seconds before your light bulb comes on. You want to flip the light switch and have the light come on. So going up to the cloud, coming back from the cloud, there's too much latency. Reliability, what if the connection to the internet goes down? We've seen it happen. You flip your light switch and nothing happens. That's unacceptable. And then, of course, security and privacy. We're not really comfortable with images of us or our data unnecessarily going to the cloud, where who knows who's going to get it. So what's happening with cameras? Well, more and more and more pixels. I think it was Samsung has shown a 250 megapixel image sensor. Right now, Sony is selling 150 megapixel image sensor. If you have to ask the price, you can't afford it, but it is getting there. We're seeing smaller pixels come into play. At a conference I attended virtually here earlier this year, people are talking about pixels down to 0.4 microns. Just to give you something in point of reference, the wavelength of light is about 0.5 microns. Okay, so there are a lot of technical issues there. We can't make lenses good enough to match that. But the ability to make that happen is there. We have sensors now that are giving us 3D images. They're actually measuring the time of flight of light to generate 3D images. They have light field images where without going into this, you can take a picture and then you come back to your computer, bring it in, and you can focus it and adjust the depth of field after you take it. So you can focus on something near and you can change your mind, refocus on something far. So this technology exists. As a matter of fact, there's a company called Light, which here in the Bay Area, that was making a camera that's sold. I actually saw one, talk to a guy at a conference, and he pulled one out of his pocket. It's a camera, but it has 12 cameras built into it, 12 image sensors, each with its own lens. And when you snap the shutter, it's taking 12 pictures simultaneously. Then you go back and you decide what size picture you want, where you want it focused, all of those things. We have computational imaging, which is giving us like light field imaging, but there's other things where we get something like the Rambus camera showed you earlier, where you really don't get an image out of it. You get kind of a blob that you and I can't understand if we look at it. But with all the equations and the processing power behind it, we can get useful images out. So there's a lot of that. People are working on remote shutters when, controlled by voice, controlled by blink, or any other event that comes on. I don't know if any of you have experience, but I was given here several years ago a camera by somebody at a conference, a point and shoot camera, and said, would you take a picture of the three of us? I said, sure, I would. I held the camera up, getting it framed, ready to go. It took the picture. I didn't press the shutter button. I said, what's this? Well, let me take another one. I held it up. the camera identified the faces, made sure they were all smiling. Nobody was blinking, and it took the picture without pressing the shutter. We also are developing things like hyperspectral imaging, where each pixel is not just a gray level or a color, but it's a whole spectral analysis of everything going on in that picture. In Europe, they often refer to that as chemical engineering, because different chemistries have different absorptions and absorption bands and transmission bands, and they can actually tell the chemical composition of things. So now, rather than a single point spectrometry, we can have a whole image that gives us all of that spectral data. It's proving very useful in areas like recycling, where you want to separate out different kinds of plastic. So this is all coming along. So we're going to see things in a lot of things. I've worked on a project on patient monitoring, where they're actually putting cameras in the patient room to monitor the patient, to tell the patient's temperature, if the fever comes on. If a nurse comes in and doesn't wash her hands before attending the patient, it alerts people. If the patient falls out of bed or gets out of bed and falls down, it'll alert people at the central monitoring station, and probably a lot more. It's used currently in agriculture and food preparation. It's going to be used more and more and more in this area. Chemical analysis, I managed waste management, recycling, it's going to do this. And behavior and attitude monitoring, the camera can look at you and can tell what your emotional state is, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether you're angry, whether you're confused, whether you're bored, whatever it is, it can tell that. We're going to see more augmented reality. I don't know that we'll be wearing Google Glass, but maybe something like it. SLAM, which stands for simultaneous location and mapping. That's actually being done if you have a GPS navigation in your car, especially if there's a camera in the car also. It's using that. It's not only getting the GPS and map information for you, but it's looking around and saying, how well does this match the map and where I think I'm at? Smart weapons, it's being used on that to do it. Search and rescue, finding people, and safety inspections. It'll be used more and more on things. I can envision a day when we go out to an airplane, it's probably flown autonomously, which is kind of exciting. But the pre-flight inspection, there'll be a drone that runs around the airplane and does the pre-flight inspection. Very, very, evident that this can definitely take place. So it's going to be here. Every place we go, every place we move, there are going to be cameras helping us or hurting us. You're going to go into stores, they have security cameras now, but they want to know, what are you looking at? How long do you stay and look at a thing? What is your expression? What is your sentiment? Can they read your sentiment? And they'll send you a text message that'll say, hey, Stuart, if you want to buy that thing over there, we'll give you 10% off if you buy it right now. Take it to the checkout counter. So they knew you were thinking about it. So they're going to go there. They're going to give you that little bit of an additional push to go there. So, be prepared. Big brother, big sister, aunt, uncle, nephew, cousin, stranger along the street, they're all going to be watching. It's not just big brother, it's everybody is going to be watching everybody else. And this is the reality. We're going to get used to it. I hate that's kind of a gloomy picture for some of us. A lot of us are going to work in this technology. Hopefully we can bring ethics to bear in how it's applied, how it's used, so that it's less of an invasion on privacy, and things are managed well. Sensors are going to be every place. The cost is dropping. Real-time processing is dropping. flexibility, reliabilities in there. We're going to be able to get 2D images that we're used to, 3D images. We have that now. It's even in some cell phones. The spectrum that we talked about, being able to tell what chemicals are there, optical flow, seeing how things are moving, how they're changing, all of that's going to be there. If we could just have a camera that would detect viruses in the atmosphere, that would be wonderful. That would be a terrific invention. However, there are so many viruses around in the air that none of us would ever get out of bed. So maybe that has to be refined on. So at this point, before I go to my conclusions, I'll just open it up for questions. And I don't know, any questions? If you've typed them in, fine. If you've not, you want to unmute, that's fine.
Barry?
Yes.
It's Carl. Yeah, I was wondering, what do you typically do with cameras yourself? What is your, I take it you don't do the math behind it. So just curious.
Well, okay, Carl, good morning. Most of my work is in the industrial automation area. So when I was in school, my degree was in EE, and I really hated the optics part of the physics course that we were required to take. And now I deal mostly in optics. So, never say never, because it can get there, but I still do algorithm development on occasions. And I get into other areas like patient monitoring and some consumer products, but not terribly much.
Did you design the optical systems?
What was that?
You design the optics, or?
Well, I select the optics. I don't design it. I'm not a lens designer. I have a program. I'm dangerous. Okay, it's like just because you have a program doesn't mean you know what to do. In lens designing, it's very easy. I can design a lens in 15 minutes. It's just not manufacturable. It requires tolerances, and I'm not knowledgeable enough in tolerancing. Or I'd end up picking some exotic glass that's only made once a year and really unavailable. So there's a lot of things that limit me on being able to be a lens designer. Other questions?
So Perry, we got a lot of questions coming in from
Okay.
the chat. Let me pull some in here. So question on the session was recorded. The session is recorded. There was a question on, you showed a lot of cameras for agriculture. What are they driving, or what's the other side of that? What are they enabling?
Okay, with agriculture, it's interesting. First of all, they're working on autonomous tractors that'll run across the field and do what they need to do, so that basically the farmer can get his work done while he sleeps. That's the theory of it. But there's other things like herbicides, going along and driving along and identifying the weeds and just placing the herbicide just right on the weed alone, not over the whole field. So it's much better for the environment, and that sort of thing. Looking at the crops, telling the health of the crops, where does fertilizer needed, where is water needed, because a farmer may have a big field, but it's not absolutely uniform. The water doesn't stay in the ground the same every place. So some areas need a little more water than others. Some may be less nutrient rich than others areas. So being able to control that cuts the farmer's cost down, increases the farmer's yield. Then it's used in all kinds of things. And for example, in harvesting, it's used in tomatoes. Tomatoes have to be sorted in the field. And the bad ones thrown on the ground. It's a strange thing with our government. If you're harvesting a product like tomatoes, anything you don't want, you can throw back. Any tomatoes that are bad, you can throw back in the ground, and that's fine. You take them into a plant, a processing plant, anything they throw out becomes toxic waste. You can't take it back to the field. So they sort in the fields because they can throw all the junk back on the ground, plow it under and keep going. Don't ask me why that's that way. I don't understand it. You get in the plant, there's all kinds of food sorting systems. Most food sorting is done to remove foreign objects, dirt, sticks, lizards, all kinds of stuff that comes in from the field that you and I don't want to see when we open a can or open a package of food. It's not appetizing to us. Rocks, stones, piece of PVC pipe, all kinds of things have to be identified and pulled out. So that's being done with imaging. And then there's other things about the quality, ripeness, coloration, discoloration, defects, this sort of thing that get into what you do with the product.
So Perry, you've presented quite a bit of stuff. What are you most excited to see coming?
Well, I'm most excited and most with a lot of trepidation about the fact that the Internet of Things will let us gather a lot of data that's very, very useful to us. This is not a field I work in heavily, but it's coming. It's going to be very big. And, you know, it's going to improve the quality of life. It's also going to, it has a potential to really degrade the quality of life if privacy isn't protected, personal data isn't protected. This is going to be a challenge. For example, if you go in to do an interview to get a job, maybe a permanent job, maybe a consulting job, there's maybe a camera placed in there that's looking at your emotions, at your feelings, at your behavior, recording that and giving that information. You don't get the assignment, or you don't get the job. You don't even know you've been looked at and evaluated by a machine. So it'll be troubling for us. I think some legislation is going to be required to let us know when we're being observed and what data is being, gathered on us. We try to do that with the internet. But have you been to any site recently that hasn't told you it's using cookies? So
no, I guess my question on that is, it would seem like there may be a dozen different entities gathering data on you if you're in a public location or an outdoor location or whatever, right? So it's not just
it's not just the good guys,
right.
Yeah, and even the good guys are. What are they going to do with the data?
Send it to the bad guys.
Yeah, sell it to the bad guys probably. So it will get around. We're going to have to find ways to deal with this.
There wasn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, the criteria really hasn't been the criteria hasn't been well established, and the methodology I don't even think is, people are speculating on it but not even thinking hard about it.
We all have another reason to wear our masks, don't we?
Yeah, we can go into the bank now wearing a mask. If we don't, we get kicked out.
No.
But you're going to have to cover up your eyes, because the eyes will tell a lot. Or like you saw in that one thing, they're actually for telling they're looking at the cheeks, what could well be outside of the mask.
Yeah, the only difference, the differentiating factor in that case will be the gun that you carry. If you have a gun and a mask, then you're a bank robber. Otherwise, you're a normal person.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, I guess. But they would be able to tell if you have a gun. I mean, and of course, banks have had surveillance cameras for a long time. And I always wondered why by the door they had this strip with the foot markings on it. And one day it just occurred to me, the bad guy comes in, they get his height.
People are bad at estimating height. It's what they learned. They put the chart right there to
right by the doorway, in and out. You want, or go in your bank next time and you'll see it there by the doorway.
7-Eleven, a bunch of places.
A bunch of places. And that's all just to help them, more accurately tell how tall the person was. So if you're going to rob a bank, stoop over or wear elevator shoes.
So any other serious questions for Perry?
Now I have one for Perry. Has Rambus ever marketed or sold any products based on their lensless technology? It doesn't seem like there's anything out there.
To my knowledge, no. Now Rambus's business model is they're an IP company. They do R&D and sell IP. So they wouldn't be the one to market it directly. They would have somebody market it for them. So no, I don't think that, and I haven't seen anybody pick it up. There are other lensless camera technologies around. If you Google it, go on YouTube, there's some by a professor at UC Berkeley that's doing lensless technology that's a little easier, at least for me to understand.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yes.
Well, Perry, you had some final remarks?
Well, I just do. Here. And there's, we're going to save a lot of labor. It's going to make things easier for us, but we're going to have to learn more technology. Every time they save us work, they require us to learn more as to how to save that work. I'm not sure if there's a net gain, but I'm thinking.
Yeah, you save work, but you will save worker as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You have to work at saving work. So we're going to have more data. So they're going to ask for more expertise in data analysis. This may be an area where there are consulting opportunities. You're going to have more cameras around, acquiring more images. That's just given. And you are going to be on camera a lot more in everything going on. Most of it's going to be very positive for you. So, so I think I think there's opportunities out there and benefits, as well as some challenges. So that's it. And
well, thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah.
And thanks, Perry, for giving us a fantastic and very fascinating talk.
You're welcome. And I hope you have a different perspective on cameras. Go out and count the number of cameras you have. You may be really surprised at how many cameras you have at home already.